we are in the space of imagining what if schools or sustainability and responsible management leadership was the mainstream in business schools. So this is a moment of dreaming. This is the session of thinking a little bit out of the box. And to be honest, I've really been looking forward to this moment with three distinguished, internationally renowned scholars by my side. And some of you may also have noted how this particular session caught the eye of Sandra Ujambo this morning when she welcomed the Global Forum, that she thought this imagine if could be really something that could be inspiring all of us. So the general idea of imagine if is really dreamed up by Tima Bansal, who's joining us there. Yes, hi Tima, I see you. So to call for a pause of reflection, to step out of the box and to reimagine what higher education could be like if we made our utmost, or if we allowed ourselves to dream a little bit beyond the normal constraints that we are faced with in business schools and in academia. So today I'm very pleased, proud, and happy to welcome three of my good colleagues, distinguished scholars from the United States of America, from Canada, and from Holland. I have here Jim Walsh with me, former president of the Academy of Management, and you are also professor of the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan. Admirably, you have also co-founded the Africa Academy of Management that some of us enjoy. Some of us enjoy to participate in on a biannual basis, which is a wonderful invention, which has a lot to do with responsible leadership, the tone, the dialogue that's going on right there. You are also in your research over, I don't know how many years you've been engaged in setting a tone for what does responsible leadership actually mean, leadership, management, so on. So warm welcome, Jim, to you for this panel. I also have here with me Tima Bansal from Canada, and you are the research chair in business sustainability at the Ivey Business School at Western University in Canada, yes. Professor of strategy, and importantly, very engaged in the Academy of Management in general, but also you have admirably co-founded, not say co-founded, it's actually you who are the founder of the Network for Business Sustainability, where I just recently learned, I know it's a big network and I follow you, you know, your work and what you're doing, but I wasn't aware that you actually have about 8,000 researchers and managers from nations around the world committed to advancing sustainable business. So that's something. So warm welcome to you, Tima. I'm very pleased to see you here. And then finally, I have Rob Bauer, professor of finance, a chair of institutional investors, School of Business and Economics, Maastricht University in the Netherlands. And you are also the executive director of the International Center for Pension Management in Toronto, I learned recently, so there's a sort of a Canadian link there. Yes. But you are also a co-chair of the relatively newly established Global Research Alliance on Sustainable Finance and Investment, led out of Oxford, but it is a growing, sort of, we're starting out with 12 schools, and I don't know how many you are right now, but a sort of a new area for responsible management and responsible leadership that is sort of in its emergence as it is right now. So very, very excited and very happy to have you here on board. So a warm welcome to you also, Rob.
Thanks.
So this is just going to be exciting, and I will simply leave the floor to you, to the three of you, and I would like to start inviting you, Jim, on the floor, and then you, Tima, and then Rob, to start sort of reimagining with us here and with our audience. What if? So, Jim, I know that you have some slides, and I think that Ariel will help us to get them on the screen.
Oh, fantastic.
Some things is happening. Yeah, it's all very exciting, this hop-in platform, new technology here. It was a little too exciting this morning, I can tell you, but
that's what I heard.
I think Ariel is there, and she's sharing the slides right now.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
We can continue with the program. I'll just try to get the slides up in a minute.
That's great.
Okay. Let me just say it's nice to see you, and then whoever's seeing me, it's nice to see you in my imagination. I only see the four of us, and I'm happy to be here. It's I love these kinds of blue sky questions where you just sit and stare at the sky and imagine an answer to a question of an imagine if kind of question. The first slide I had was I just looked up the definition of mainstream because my general intuition is that sustainability is mainstream, and that was my sort of start for all of this. And I put this, but I want to put it in context, and it goes to your comment, Mette, that how long have you been doing this? I realized that this summer marks the 40th anniversary of when I walked into Leverone Hall to get my PhD or earn my PhD at Northwestern University. So I've actually lived through the sustainability movement, because when I entered the business school there and then got my first job in the mid 80s, this was nowhere on the radar screen. And yet my thought is that it is mainstream right now. And so trying to get out in front of the technology problems I delegated, maybe I'd be better off on my own app. What I did this weekend is I looked up the air quotes top business schools in the world, and I went to the US News and World Report. The keyword there is two words are US, and I got their list of the top 15 schools according to their rating ranking scheme. And then I went to the Financial Times, and then they kicked out 6 schools and put in 6 other schools. So I looked at 21 quote unquote top business schools, mission and vision statements. And if Ariel can put this up, what I have is what I found. And so I've got the 21 statements. And if you look at the web pages for these 21 schools, basically every single one of them, or 19 of them to be sure, are talking about social impact of one kind or another in trying to make a better world. It's in the absolute vision statement for these universities. And so I've got 2 slides that just show that. And I'm happy to share these with the world when we're done, if anybody was interested in this. And then I said, okay, well, those are just words. What are they actually doing? Are they walking the talk? So then I snooped around the web pages, and it wasn't hard to find programs at every single one of these schools. And these are programs about social impact, social enterprise, social entrepreneurship, aspirations for a better world, all of this. And there are curricular and co-curricular activities in all regards, and research centers at all of these schools. And so then I said, okay, imagine if sustainability, it's kind of like a sucker's question. I feel like this is the trick question to see if I can get into graduate school. It is mainstream. Now what do I do? And so then one path through it is to say, well, is it enough? Are we doing it well, et cetera? But I took a different tact on this and said, I asked the so what question, that it's here, and then sort of, does it matter at some level? And so there, I want to say that I am, and Tima knows me best of everyone here, and then Mette, you're second best, and Rob, it's nice to meet you. But for those that know me, I'm a dispositional optimist. I truly am. But I pay attention to the downsides and the undersides of everything. And so I found myself, I went to Google Scholar and I just plugged in moral licensing. So I got a little screenshot there if anybody's interested, but there are 388,000 hits for moral licensing in Google Scholar. So those are articles and essays of some sort talking about that. And then I offered the definition of Google Scholar. Oh, there it is. Slide down to the definition of moral licensing. Those are the statements. Again, we can post this if anyone wants to see all this stuff.
Which slide?
If you can go down to just moral licensing, the definition. Everybody that works in the sustainability space worries, both appreciates and worries that any kind of social investment can be seen as a form of insurance, and it's a part of the license to operate in some society. And there's an upside and a downside to all of that, I suppose. what happens with moral licensing is that these kinds of activities can serve as a license to be an operator. That's maybe some slang, but the concern is that once you've come through an MBA program and you've been a part of all of these social impact initiatives, my fear is that people will then feel that they are secure in their moral self-regard, the last line of that definition. And then they can do whatever they want. There are other forces out there that are at play. And so the unintended consequence, perhaps, of the mainstream sustainability movement is we are inoculating people with a big dose of moral self-regard, and then who knows what is going to happen. And that's, I say I'm a dispositional optimist, but there's a hint of pessimism in the air. So then the sense is, all right, well, so what? The next slide, Ariel, God bless you, that's nice. I was thinking about William James's famous essay about the social value of the college bred in 1907, and it was published in 1908. And it's very well known, and I share it with all my students. But there he's talking about the purpose of education, and then it's heavily gendered. I have been when the United States, when women got the vote in the United States, and years later. But it's to know a good man when you see him. And he talks about mediocrities and cheap jacks and all kinds of people that might be considered to be people with high moral self-regard that are operators, and he's very concerned about them. And so where I am in my thinking is saying, okay, my thought is that we need to bring back some sense of morality into these MBA programs in a way to not only help us recognize the good men and women when we see them, but final slide, please. Next is to actually be the good man or good woman. And I was quoting this quote, which has been attributed to all kinds of people. I first saw it for Ernest Hemingway, but it comes all over the place. Could go back a whole 1,000 years. But there's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man, again, gendered. True nobility is being superior to your former self. So in this neoliberal world of ours, as we privilege the individual as the entrepreneur of self, and then you're out competing in every market, and the temptation is to then invest everybody in these markets. And that's part of the air we breathe in our business schools. And I would like us to think about what is moral education, and then how can we get people to focus competitively on themselves. They can better their former version of themselves rather than trying to squash their other competitors in these various markets. So that's what I got this morning. And then I'm ready to listen and then blab with all of us together. So, thanks.
No, thank you so much for this, these initial thoughts and the sort of engaging us in what is moral education, because I think that perhaps some of the neoliberal, inclined people might think that there's also a kind of a moral education attached to that approach and that worldview. I would love you to return to that with us also in a moment. Then, of course, I forgot to say that, Jim and Tima, that you are both new Prime Board members of the fantastic new Prime Board that we have established. We have launched today. We have put on our private website. So I'm just to all of you listening out there, just to understand that these voices will be brought directly into the working boardroom of Prime, which I'm, of course, very, very proud of. So we will definitely continue this discussion about moral education into the future of Prime. So thank you, Jim, for these first one, and your slides, of course, we'll share them. Tima, would you be next and help us explore some of your perspectives of Imagine, which was actually your idea, as I said, Imagine.
Thank you, Mette. You're far too kind, and what an honor to be in this panel and being invited to the board of Prime. So I have to say I'm just excited about joining the initiative, and I love Jim's extra preparation, because I did not prepare slides, and I love what Jim has to say, but in some ways I'm going to offer a complementary position on it. So he's taken a much more moral orientation, and I think that that's important, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach. And when I think about imagining if, and what I see is that we need to dislodge where we are right now and not anchor on the moment, not anchor on where business schools are now, but rather say, if we imagine this perfect world, what would it look like? And that then gives us a different cognitive orientation. That then we say, well, what would a business school look like in that perfect world? Not looking at where we are now. So I'm going to offer 3 points. The first, in my perfect mainstreamed, where business sustainability is mainstreamed, is that the outcome of an organization or individual is not about the success of the organization, it's about the success of society. And so everything weaved into finance, strategy, operations is with a different outcome, I feel. And this is the shift then from where we are, is that business schools were anchored in economic type thinking. Economic type thinking has certain assumptions associated with it. And this is where the morality piece, I think, went a little awry, is that the economic man, sorry, Jim, that's using that same old language, is someone who's competitive, doesn't mind competition, someone who's self-interested, someone who's opportunistic, someone who believes that they're rational. And those assumptions might apply at the level of markets or economies, but they don't apply at the level of the organization individual. But we have translated that in business schools. And then we've stopped at the success of organizations rather than thinking about organizations as a mechanism for the betterment of society. So my first point, the outcomes or purpose of all of the business school would be for the betterment of society. The second thing I see in my ideal business school is the emphasis on problems and solutions and not on theories and disciplines. And if we saw the business school like a medical school as fixing problems, making society better, public health, and in business it would be making society better through organizations, and we fixated on the problems and the solutions, we would naturally move towards the successful outcomes of society and not the disciplines and the success within our disciplines. The third thing is that I would love us to fix or to have much more of a systems orientation in business schools, that we wouldn't be looking at a reductivist cause-effect model, which tends to be very much associated with enlightenment, with science, that we would really be thinking about systems that have wicked problems associated with them. And that would be abductive thinking, not deductive thinking, not reductivist. And so that abductive would allow us to look at the problem, look at the solution, look back at the problem, look at the solution, look at the theory, look at the data. And this back and forth will keep us aligned with the real world. And so moving from the plan do act to really understanding a system, and that requires integration. So 3 things I want to repeat. One is that we think about the outcome or purpose of an of a business school as societal betterment, that we think about problems and solutions and not theories and disciplines. And we see systems and not a cause and effect models.
Thank you very much, Tima. That's an aspiration. And I was just thinking as you were speaking, how far are we really from that target? Maybe you could get back to sort of think a little bit with us. What does it take to get there? Why are we not there? It sounds so plausible. It sounds like the truly right thing to do, but it also seems we're not really there yet. Yeah, but thank you so much, Tima.
Thanks, Mette.
For these introductory remarks. And Rob, you, last but not least, I welcome you to provide some introductory remarks. And I think also for you listening, onto this session, we specifically designed the session to have not necessarily an agreement, but scholars who have, come with bringing their own traditions from strategy, from organization behavior, and from finance. And finance, that's you, Rob. Please.
Yeah, so I'm really the odd duck here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm a finance professor. I'm a non-board member of Prime. So I must have a different view, but nonetheless, I'm just as Jim, I'm an optimist. And I think people in sustainability are generally somehow optimists. That's my little empirical investigation, says something, but I'm also a pragmatist. So when I thought about imagining, the first thing I thought, there shouldn't be any business schools in the first place. So get rid of business schools. That's the first thing I thought. Why? Because we need to be more interdisciplinary and even transdisciplinary in our research. By having business schools, we can at the very most be interdisciplinary. So finance works together with marketing, and then the odd duck from strategy adds to it, and we got a project that we call multidisciplinary. But I think what is really cool, if you think about solving a problem in an Indian ghetto to get people entrepreneurial and produce their own food and all that sort of stuff, you need people from all kinds of disciplines. I have been involved in projects like this, and you really get energy. And when you start with such a project, you all respect each other, but you start with something new. It's not like I do my stuff, you do your stuff, and we add it together, but we all have the same goal. And when we talk about sustainability, we talk about quite some big things that we want to change societally. You cannot do that with single disciplines, in my view. I think the second point I want to make, except for killing business schools or management schools, is actually having more practitioners involved in the research and the education. And it's not having a practitioner doing a guest lecture or going there to get some money and do some research. I mean, from the start. Small example, I started with some research on real estate and how sustainability is incorporated into real estate in the 2000s. At some point, we were very successful in the academic publishing of that research. It took the attention from some investors, and they said, can you not make some product with us? So we started talking about that. And in the end, 10 years later, there's a big benchmarking company doing real estate benchmarking for all private and listed real estate infrastructure, and they're starting with private equity. Unfortunately, I'm not involved, but in any case, it led to something. It was a public-private partnership. And what I see, and I'm in Canada quite a lot, and also in the US, I see that this interdependency between academics and companies or investors or whatever organizations in the private sector is somehow seen as something that is okay, it's cool, it's to work together in Europe, whereas it seems to be there are some boundaries there, some impediments in the US. It's either this or that. Probably independent behavior is one of the reasons for that you're afraid of that. But that is something I would like to say as well. Involve the practitioners in your research and in your education. And then the third, involve your students in the research and the education. And that's also not just a simple thesis that you let them write or being a research assistant and you're the cool publisher of a certain article that they work hard on. No, I really mean involve in something. So give you an example on that, what I recently did. GO Tobacco-Free Portfolios came to me and said, the Tobacco-Free Portfolios initiative wants all these investors to divest from tobacco, and this must have an impact on tobacco companies, how they are run and how they are viewed financially as well, but nobody dares to talk about that. Can your students do something? I said, let's make a project out of that. So I asked my honor students, would you like to work on this topic for 6 months? I carefully selected 3 smokers and 3 non-smokers in the project to get unbiased views and etc. And we publish a document, and they're really proud of it because their name is on the document, and they present it from now on every year in my course. So what I want to say with this, summarizing, really carefully think not just about the purpose of the business school, but whether the business school has to exist in its current form and in any case. Secondly, involve practitioners and students in your research and education. These are the 2 main messages I have. And I've got a lot more to say on impediments and what it means for faculty and students, but let's open it up, I guess.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Rob, for these initial reflections on interdisciplinarity and practitioner collaboration, and not least the students, of course, and the whole sort of thinking about Also, I guess the curriculum, what you do in GRASFI, how does sustainable finance actually become part of the finance curriculum? That's something that I think is also an interesting area to explore further. But maybe I will go back, to Jim, or whoever wants to sort of capture the word here. I am painfully aware of that time is running too fast. I really enjoyed already listening to these that I keep calling introductory remarks, but we have 15 minutes left, and I want to spend them in the best possible way, of course. So please, Jim, would you like to come back to some of the or comment on some of the things that have been said here, or or maybe talk more about the moral education that you are putting on the floor here?
No, there's so much. There's so much to say. But the one thing that just popped into my head as I was listening to all of this is just the challenges of dualism and the paradox that lies everywhere, and then the temptations of that, which is, again, gives you license to go in any direction you want. This is, as I've been teaching, and it's an odd verb to teach, but anyways, I've been exploring these issues with students for a number of years now. I find it enables people to learn how to think, actually, because there are no simple answers here. And so, we want people that understand business, but we don't want business schools. We want students to be involved in research, but we also want people that are trained in research to be doing the research. We are interested in the purpose of business, but the purpose of business is nested within society, and so we care about society. So there's just non-dualism, and so Tima, I think, was pointing out the problems of, when she's talking about abduction, that we've inherited a kind of a worldview born of positive science, and then maybe that is a problem for us. And it gets to abduction and systems thinking, and then Rob is actually instantiating it as he's trying to break boundaries. So I guess what I like to do is just reflect that back to the group and say, how do we make our way in a non-dual world, but one that is structured as if the world were, if you will, non-dual?
Yes, thank you, Jim. I guess also, knowing your work.
And then we'll go back for 5 hours. Sorry, this just launches us in the wrong direction, probably.
But again, knowing your work, knowing you, and you also come from the stance that is a very non-moralizing sort of agenda. It is not. This is of course also what you're saying here, that there is not the way of engaging with responsible management or responsible leadership. It is a more way of empowering the individual to think for him or for herself. I don't know,
and to be self-reflective, so that you don't turn into an operator. That's the point. And then others are involved in that self-reflection process.
So, Tima, why doesn't it happen for us? What's hindering us as institutions to actually make that change? Or
yeah. I don't know, Mette, if I have an answer to that that's novel. I think that we know the problems, and we can talk about those problems as tenure, incentives, unions, laziness, it's mental models, it's organizational structures. But I really want to focus on what I think that I love this imagining what this could look like, and I want to build a little bit on what Jim and Rob have already said. I think that we need two things. Once again, I'm into the numbers, but one is that we need to not dismiss what we have. We need what I would like. I've heard others. I'm actually stealing these two ideas from other people, but spiky integrators. We need spiky integrators. We need people that are really good at stuff, at faculty that are really good at things. And so we can't dismiss the fact that each of us on this panel, including you, Mette, are really good at knowing something well. And we have to continue to do that. But we have to do a better job at integrating. That's what we don't do well. I would love to see our universities encourage spiky integrators and not just spikes. And that goes back to Rob's point about transdisciplinarity, is that we need to be able to work with others. And to build on the other point on changing the model, and Jim actually hinted at this teaching when he stopped himself. That's an odd word, all right? In fact, we should be co-creators. We should be people who work with and know how to work with, based on our specialist knowledge, with others to co-create solutions to problems. And if those are students, fantastic. If those are other faculty, if that's society, if that's whoever, we are co-creators with specialized knowledge. And I heard this once again from someone else, and I remember who these are. The first one, Spiky Integrators, was McKinsey. The next one, we have to stop being a sage on stage to being a guide on the side. And that's somebody at MIT that I heard that from. And once we see ourselves as a guide, and that we are all collectively in this venture of moving society to a better place, I think that we get there. So that's I feel like rather than dwelling on the problems, I feel like we knew where we were going, we'd have better sense of how to overcome some of those problems. And what COVID has done is, well, devastating in so many ways, but so motivating though. In 3 months, we have pivoted. Look at this conference. We can do this. We can achieve that vision. Anyway, onwards. Rob.
No, thank you, Tima. I'm just reading, some of the comments also coming out here, and somebody's saying, Marian is saying, what an energizing discussion. I don't feel tired anymore.
Love it.
Oh, my head's about to explode.
Rob, over to you. Yeah.
Yes. So it's so funny.
Very easy to be a moderator here with
Okay.
such great scholars. Sorry, Rob.
No worries. So the word co-creation, you can easily use it. But in order to co-create, probably before that, you need to ideate. You need to have ideas. So what do we do in universities? We put people into a room, let one person speak and others kill him with nasty questions. That is absolutely not ideation, and that never will lead to co-creation. So I think we also have to think about that part of the discussion. And I think when you look at it from a distance, we probably have a lot of competition between schools, especially if you have private schools. They have to get money in, and especially in the COVID context, it's even worse. In the Netherlands, we have public schools, so that part is a bit less. But then you go into the school and there's competition between departments, and then you go into a department, there's competition between professors. So there's a lot of competition, which on the one hand is good because we want to, get to a higher level in our thinking. And if we are all lazy, it doesn't work. But I think somehow it's an impediment as well. So we need to somehow share the knowledge through these ideation sessions and then co-create something. But that's, some of us are better in it than others. It's not an easy one. I also think, Paul Krugman, you all know him, said proximity matters. Somehow what I see, at least in my university, we got, let's say, the natural sciences and the other ones. The other ones are in the middle of the city in building here, a building there, a building there. And then only the business school is a big building because we are a big faculty. And then all the natural sciences are at the other side of our river Maas. And we never go there. So I think when you want to create and ideate, you somehow have to bring them together also geographically. More like I envisage, like in this new Apple building in the middle, you have this big ring of where everyone goes, and around it are the different smaller buildings that are the faculties, and everybody has to be in the big ring at least 70% of the time, and otherwise you're fired, something like that. I think that's really important. If you don't do that, and you don't have to work with all the disciplines, that's simply not possible. And I may have been carried away a bit, but I think if you look at me, I'm writing about climate change and the impact on business. I have no clue about the natural science discussion on climate change. I'm just a consumer of it. And I write a paper with 3 finance people about the topic. That's bad. Still a good paper though, but nonetheless, it's actually absolutely not the best paper that could have been written about the topic. So, and that's, I think, is a really important point for the future. You don't hear a lot of finance people say this, by the way. The way I do. I know Mette's colleagues in Stockholm would have a bit, some of them would have the same approach, but I also know some that do not have. So we are all trained to go into our own field. And my professor that gave me my PhD said, Rob, specialize. And the most important sentence that I did not like as a young researcher was, anytime I produced something, an idea, or then my supervisor said, what do you contribute to the literature? How do you position this to the literature? That kills all innovation if you do that. So that's my view on this. This is an impediment.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Rob, for these comments and for these insights. Can I just ask you, and now just invite you for a last round, and then we will unfortunately rub off. There's an idea out here. I would love you to make a podcast with this team. We have to think about this into the future. But Rob, could you maybe, as a last comment, talk a little bit about sustainable finance in the finance curriculum?
In 5 years ago in Maastricht, we were already actually integrating finance into our sustainability into our mainstream curriculum ad hoc. But at some point we thought, this doesn't make sense. People are asking for it. We also have a liberal arts program at University College in which also the students really want the stuff next to the standard corporate finance. So we thought of a Master of Sustainable Finance. For 5 years now we're doing this. Very successful, very international. People come from all over the place. It's a hardcore finance master. So it's absolutely nothing less than a normal finance master. And on top of that, you get the discussion on sustainability through case studies, through theory. We also go across disciplines. We have a lot of behavioral economics in it, as a lot of stuff that is done also in management, I guess, is also related to social preferences and beliefs people have. So, it has been a challenge to start it. You have to explain it. People have to sort of signal to the labor market, if you do a sustainable finance, you can still work in Morgan Stanley or at whatever bank. And that's not easy because the banks also have to understand that. But we were able to do that, and people really land well. And if you want to know more about it, there's a whole website on our program that you can see more examples of what we do.
Thank you so much, Rob. Tima, can I turn back to you and then Jim for a final word?
Sure. I just want to say what we're doing at Ivey, which is only a small step forward, but I'm excited about it. And that's that I co-teach all of a single session each of the core courses in the MBA program. So they see sustainability as a different way of seeing. So teach it with my operations colleague, my strategy colleague, my management science colleague, my finance colleague, and it's amazing because they then see those core disciplines from a different perspective. I would love us to co-teach more so that we not only educate the students, but that, this is a teaching point, but anyway, that we also work with our colleagues as well. And I love this co-creation, co-teaching, everything. So, okay, that's the future.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this, Tima. Jim?
Let me just say a word about the co, as to, pardon me, whom we're likely to bump into next. And I'll just go back to the, August of 1980. I just sort of paying attention to the sustainability movement as it came. You could see the signals when they were just the weak signals emerging, and then it all unfolded. It doesn't take much to see this ever so slowly, very tentative drift toward morality with respect to education. And and the co is philosophy that's out there. And then people in philosophy are very interested in our world for a variety of reasons as well. But when you get into this, and it ties to Tima's comment about what's good for society and what does society want, when you start thinking about the teleology of business, that puts you into the land of moral philosophy. And then, at least as I understand it, you can go the pragmatic route, and then that's pretty safe in a secular institution. If you go into intrinsic values, or you start actually talking about the good and naming it other than just the better, then you start bumping up at the foundations of that and theology. And then there's a class at Darden about faith in business and the like. But you can start to see these moves with respect to, we have courses now on the good life in Ross. The #1 elective at Stanford is the touchy-feely class. Harvard has a course on the good life. You can see it. It's starting to move as people are trying to find an anchor in this world that will enable them to not just avoid becoming a licensed operator, but to try to figure out what is the good in a world, in the world of the Anthropocene, where so much seems to be unraveling. And so I think the co-creation is going to bring us into the world of philosophy, if not theology, in the years to come. Record this, come back in 8 years. I bet you anything I've seen the future.
Whoa.
But anyway, that's one of many things.
What a wonderful way to end this this session. Thank you so much to all three of you. Interdisciplinarity, systems thinking, moral education, and not least the not the COVID, but the co-collaboration, the co-creation, the whatever across disciplines and across geographies. Thank you so much. There's been suggestions here of the podcast that I mentioned before, or writing something. You all do that anyways. Nobody suggested a film, but I think we got one here because this was actually recorded. So we already do have a little film here for anyone who didn't join the session to be seen afterwards. All three of you, thank you so much for being here today in this important session. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody listening in also did. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Mette.
Bye.
Bye, Rob. Bye, Jim.
Bye, everyone.